The 2011 is one of those guns that may be ubiquitous in airsoft, but little is known about the real thing. While double stack modifications and kits for the legendary Colt M1911 have existed since the 1980s to address its limited magazine capacity, it was companies like Staccato, formerly known as STI, that helped bring the concept into the mainstream with guns built from the ground up, like the 2011, both for sport shooting and service carry. In airsoft, the concept of a double-stack 1911 isn't new due to the Marie High Kappa series, but only recently have fully licensed double-stacked 1911s become available. Hi, I'm Andrew, and in this week's video, we're putting aside the usual fictional high kappas, are instead reviewing not one, but two fully licensed 4.3-inch Staccato 2011 GBBs, with this one from Army Armament and this one from EMG. What's more is that each of these two companies also makes a whole host of other licensed Staccato GBB models, including the Staccato XC and the Staccato XL, that we also will sell. But for the sake of brevity, we'll just be sticking with these two compact Staccato Ps. So let's start off with first impressions. Externally, these 2011s feature a rock-solid, full metal, weighty construction, with heavily textured polymer grips, but do note that the finish on the metal slide of the Army 2011 is a few shades lighter than the frame, unlike the EMG over here, which has a more uniform coloration. For high kappa users, the ergonomics of these pistols should be familiar, but these feature fully licensed Staccato markings on both sides and underneath the low receiver. These details also include a teeny tiny forward marching USA flag on the right side right over here, which is pretty good detail. These details also extend to the grip. I really do like these sort of angled textures on the grip and the trigger guard. It's not as grippy as a full-blown hand stippling, but it's easily one of the better molded grip textures out there, which really aids in shooting. I will credit EMG, however, with having a more deeper textures on their grips than the Army over here. Though it must, however, be noted that the Army 2011 does have this flared magwell, which will greatly aid in reloads, while the EMG does not. Over to the front, which is where these two pistols deviate. Both the Army and EMG 2011s feature an 11.1 internal thread. However, the Army does come outfitted with an external 14mm CCW thread adapter by default. On the top, both pistols feature really prominent raised iron sights with a fiber optic front sight in order to serve as backup sights for mounted pistol optics. Now, speaking of optics, the Army 2011 over here has an optics plate mounted by default, while the EMG 2011 has the mounting plate included separately, giving this particular one a more sleek default look. And now onto the trigger. Both Staccatos feature a skeletonized 1911 trigger with a slightly curved indent and a friction surface that is great for grip. The trigger itself has very little take-up, therefore there's a very nice crisp break, great for follow-up shots. Internals do look similar, however we must note that the hammer and the magazine release of this Army is made of steel, unlike the EMG. So when it comes to extensive shooting, this will last longer. Now, both 2011 magazines are your standard high kappa magazines, compatible with most other guns. But while the EMG features a cool outline of Pyxis on the base, which is where Staccato is based, and charges gas from the top next to the release valve, the Army 2011 only has the word 2011 on the base and charges gas from the bottom, requiring you to remove the base plate in order to gas up. Both Staccato 2011s are also capable of handling CO2, with those magazines sold separately. And now for the price. The EMG Staccato costs just $134 US, while the Army costs $25 more at $159. Not a huge amount of difference, but the differences are likely due to the steel components on the Army 2011, as well as the external thread adapter and magwell. Nevertheless, they are both fantastic value for the guns you are getting. So both Staccato 2011s appear to be solid and reliable workhorses that can take a beating and keep on trucking. But how do they shoot? Well, you know the drill. Let's head to the range and find out. And now for the chrono. As usual, we'll be firing 0.2 gram BBs using green gas. First is the EMG 2011. And now the Army 2011. And now to the range. Here we are at X Zone at their 15-meter range. And for this first shooting test, we'll be testing out the EMG 2011. So let's get to it. Overall, very, very fast firing, very sort of like, very jerky, has a very good recoil as well. Accuracy is generally okay. With this one, we're using 0.25 BBs, so they were hopping up just a little bit. So we'll go and take a look at that later on. But overall, I'm quite impressed. The gun itself feels really weighty, you know, feels really good, feels really solid, not any wobble at all. So it really does, you know, it really does get the job done. You probably drop it, bash it about, and it'll still work. So overall, quite impressed. So let's go and test the next one. Right, let's take a look at this. Okay, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. I think this might actually be the 9th and maybe the 10th over here because they seem to go on this way. So tell you what, I'll do the grouping around about here. So in case you've noticed, obviously for all these videos, my point of aim is always right in dead center. So either the sights or my shooting, or maybe the hop up might be just a tiny little bit high. So it was veering off to the top and also to the left over here. But overall, like it's about palm-sized target. This might have even been a flyer. So about palm-sized target, entirely reasonable for a handgun at this range. So I'm pretty okay with that. Like, as you know, it's a pretty solid firing pistol, big heavy slide, but it still gets off quite snappily and quite efficiently. So I'm quite impressed with it. So yeah, let's look at the next one. And next up is the Army 2011. Now, you may have noticed that this particular gun has a nice little holosun on the top. And that's because it actually belongs to a NIS, who bought it the very moment it got delivered to us. Seriously, the guy practically refunds his entire salary back into the company every month. So anyway, let's get to it, shall we? Right? Ooh, nice. So yeah, like the EMG one, this is very snappy. It's a hard firing gun and it has pretty nominal accuracy as well. Now, the shot placement is more likely to be centered because we've actually been able to sort of like, you know, with the advantages of having a red dot. But I do believe that the grouping is round about the same. Overall, it's quite impressive. It's a nice heavy, it's a good heavy gun. And you know, the 4.3 I really do like as high cappers because of their compact nature. As high cappers generally have a lot more mass than say Glocks, you know, you generally want it as light as possible to go and maintain, you know, that speed when you're moving about. So I really do like it. The red dot itself, I mean, this is a really small sort of diopter sight. It doesn't actually affect the rate of fire that much. I mean, the slide itself already has a huge amount of mass, so the red dot doesn't really add to it, and it still cycles fine. So yeah, it's fantastic. It really does feel pretty dang good. So let's go check out the results. All right, here we go. So that's 1, 2, 3, I believe that's 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Tell you what, I'm going to include all these shots because they do seem to be in a sort of wider area this time as well.
So overall, it's pretty similar in grouping compared to the EMG. You know, round about palm size, and it's decent enough. It's a decent enough grouping for around 15 meters as a stock pistol. So yeah, honestly, it felt great. It felt pretty efficient, surprisingly snappy for its weight, just like the other one. So overall, I really did like it. I do like both of these guns. There really isn't a lot to tell the difference between them. After all, they are replicas of the same model. But in terms of performance, they function just fine, and I think you'd have a lot of fun with them. Anyway, let's head back to the studio.
And we're back! So the EMG and Army Staccato 2011s are solid and hard shooting pistols, ideal for skirmishing. Both guns have excellent build quality and shoot hard and fast. However, unlike typical high cappers, which are almost entirely fictional pistols, these 2011s are not only based on a real gun, but they're also fully licensed by their manufacturer. They are also surprisingly affordable handguns and offer fantastic value as well. Ultimately, aside from a few cosmetic and material differences, these two pistols are, practically identical. Though the Army does offer just a little bit more in terms of modularity and quality internals, hence its slightly higher price tag. Overall, we give both Staccato 2011s around 4.5 stars out of 5. They have excellent combination of ruggedness and detail that make them excellent backups on the field. So let's hand it over to you guys. What are your thoughts on these two Staccato 2011s? Let us know in the comments section below. And for these cool products and many more, visit us at www.redwolfairsoft.com. This is Andrew, out.